Hello. Have you come to join me on this fine evening for a little movie review? You know what time of year it is, don't you? Check your calendar. It's spooky season. This is Oddity. I'm John Stark from MovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is what happens when you have a really low production value. And it's spooky season. I can definitely do this though. So, this is Oddity, which is directed by Damien McCarthy, and it's a Shudder title, so may or may not have audio description on your platform of choice. You're probably going to have to rent it. I did. It's very frustrating how AMC Plus works because they don't have audio description on their own platform, but then they pass it through to other platforms, and then we see it on Netflix, and it gets very frustrating, and then I get a little angry. Maybe I'll just leave the flashlight on and do the spooky voice. Oddity. Oddity is a film whose narration is done by Ryan Brooks, and written by Ryan Brooks and narrated by Nicole Cirillo, and it is produced by Audio Eyes. Yes. I'm going to have fun this spooky season. This is either going to be a big hit or a terrible flop. Oddity is, for those of you who are blind, I'm just holding a flashlight and I'm into the darkness otherwise. So the only light I have on my face is flashlight and ambient backlight from camera. Oddity is creepy, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. It's a great film to get this season rolling. You know, to get to put up and just kind of kick off our spooky season with Oddity. Shudder titles are kind of all over the place, but I've kind of I liked Late Night with the Devil earlier this year. So I'm starting to kind of be like, maybe actually, I love when they're picking out the ones and they're kind of like co-releasing them with IFC, and they're putting some out in theaters. Almost like they're like, oh God, we actually have some really good ones. We should put those out instead of the ones that just go straight to Shudder where they're like, I don't know about this one. No, I'm gonna watch this. Oddity is interesting. I was oddly compelled the whole film. I was like on the edge of my seat, but I don't know what I expected, because that's really what it is, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, because Oddity, I found, knowing it was a Shudder title and knowing its capacity for, I would say, scare / gore. You know what I'm saying? But you never know how far it's going to go. It frequently kind of talks about, almost like the creepiest shit is yet to come. And you're like, when's it going to come? When's it going to come? And you just keep, there's so many scenes that had me on edge in this film where I was like, oh no, don't do that. Don't do that. And then it didn't pull it, but they found another way to make that scene still creepy and or scary. It's not full of jump scares. It does have some. I'm not gonna say it's void of jump scares, but it's also not Smile. So you don't, it's not one of those things where they're like, haha, we got you. It always jump scares out of nowhere that make absolutely no sense and are actually kind of obnoxious after a little while. We're not going to do that. No, this actually is really well thought out. And I think probably more so than any other film critic, I think I'm expected to have a discernible opinion on this because I sort of noticed this film kind of uh, hit the blind community, and we were like, oh god, it's a film where somebody who's blind also has like second sight. You know, they're also like psychic, which is such like it's such a trope that we have these. It leads people to believe we actually do have these powers innately, or that we actually uh, fight like Daredevil. You know what I'm saying? Like, like things like that. Like that these are actual real things in our lives, and they're not. So, um, I I approached this from sort of that like trepidatious ableist thing where I was like, I don't know what we're doing here with a blind character. What are we doing here? Um, so what I would say to my blind fans who are here to enjoy my spooky season reviews, I'm gonna play with that voice a lot and different voices and whatever kind of things I could. It's Halloween. It's whatever. It's 31 days of Halloween. Anyway, yeah, we okay, so the actual plot of the film is a little bit more complicated than being like, there's a blind character who has second sight. Yeah, yeah, there is. Arguably, there's also just a guy that has that ability as well. Um, there's a scene where this character Ted, who I don't know works in a mental hospital. This film is very much on a need to know basis with the audience. It actually wants you to just kind of be like, what the is going on for quite a lot of the film because that's where it operates. Sort of like if you walked into somebody's life and nobody introduced you, but yet you had to be there. You know, that's kind of what this film has a vibe. Like at the very beginning, I was paying so much attention because I was like, I don't know what's going on. But then, like later on, I was like, oh God, okay, I'm in it. I get it. Oh my God, I see what they're doing. You know, like, but like it was like little bit by little bit, and it really just pulled me in, and it had me, and I can't truly find fault here that much. The thing about the blind character is that she's a sister. So she's a sister to a sighted twin. Like there are twin sisters here, which immediately is one of those things, one of those tropes in horror movies where you're like, "Ooh, they're gonna do something fun with this." You know, like you're immediately you're like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be amazing." Um, and so the same actress is playing like a sighted version of herself, but then she also has this blind sister, and they're both kind of interested and intrigued by the same things, which is sort of like the occult oddities and old things that have been passed down through generations. Possibly, maybe the blind sister a little bit more so, but that's only because we spend a very short period of time with the sighted sister. Spoiler alert: the movie is kind of about her, the blind sister, investigating her the other sister's death and going about it in the oddest way possible. And using her sort of like uh what do I want to say? Curiosities that she's her cabinet of curiosities that she has sort of garnered over the years. She has a store where she sells things like this, and she practices it. She also mentions briefly that she does tachometry. I think I pronounced that correctly. It's where you can take an object and you can sort of like read an object, and it's something very sort of specific to like the spiritualist movement. But it is a real thing that people do, that they believe they can do it, or you can believe that they can do it. not making any comments here on it. I'm just saying it's a thing that exists outside of the film. So, um, and that's more sort of her psychicness is related to that, and less to just like, I know things. Why do you know them? I don't know why I know these things, but I know them. You know, it's less of that and more of the other, where it's like, if I touch an object, I can see things. And since that thing does not uniquely apply to blind people, and it's a thing that other regular people do, I was less bothered by it once I understood like how she gets her second sight. It's like, oh, it's that thing. Because I've like literally met real people in real life who claim to be able to do that. So, and they're not blind. So it's like they've just given, because at the same time, I don't want to get to a point where it's like, so we can't give blind people these traits. You know what I'm saying? We can't include them in this conversation because it's a trope of this, when the reality is probably the amount of people who claim to be able to do it to comedy are all sighted. You know, like in real life, they're probably all. There's maybe like one of them is blind. Um, so yeah, I don't want to not have that level of inclusion either, where it's like, well, you can't do that because of that either. You know, sometimes too many eggshells are being walked on. So it's a balance. I think they walk that balance here. The only question that I had was, I don't think the actress is blind, because A, she has to play two characters. So it's almost like you can forgive it because she also has to play a sided character. But at the same time, I didn't think she really played convincingly. I don't really think, and the audio description didn't really set her up where I was like, is she blind? You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't quite feel that from her. There are little mentions of things where it's like, yeah. But like, I was looking for, does she use a cane? And how does she use the cane? Like, this could just be totally reductive down to the audio description. Like, I was looking for, how does she use mobility here? Because I don't quite, she seems to just kind of know where things are, but at the same time, there are things that she does where you're like, oh shit, she's blind. You know, like she asks where the bathroom is, and then she takes somebody's arm and lets them guide her there. But then she also just like finds shit on her own, like of her own volition. She just finds things. And then like there's this chest that she has mailed to this house, and she just seems to find it without much. Either she can, I don't know, maybe she can smell it. I have no idea. But yeah, it seems very inconsistent how she's able to sort of navigate. And that was sort of my question, was, what's up? I didn't quite understand what they were trying to pull off here, and I was less concerned with the whole second sight thing and more concerned with consistency and representation of what a blind person would be like in this situation. Anyway, because this is not her house, it's her sister's house, so she'd be slightly less familiar with it. She goes to visit her. Most of the film takes place at her sister's old house with her brother-in-law, who has now met somebody else. Obviously not a great look. He's moved on a little too quickly, she thinks, and is a little suspicious, so she's gonna head up there and see what's what. So she just kind of shows up. But yeah, I did kind of question how that was happening for her. Yeah, there's also another scene where she like feels all of the food, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about that, because I feel like, yes, if it was like my food, but it's presented as like a charcuterie board. So it's like maybe not all her food, but I also, that scene is also presented in a way where it could be a giant fuck you. So I just want people to know I don't touch all the food on the table. I'm generally really careful. And I'm the type of person who, like, if I'm in some sort of like group food situation, and if I've touched them, I commit to it, and I'm like, well, this is the one I'm having. Uh, I'm eating this one. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna eat it. Um, if I've accidentally touched it, I'm picking it up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Like, I don't want other people to have to eat food that I've touched. So if I accidentally touch something, it's like, well, it's on my plate now. Uh, my bad. um, so yeah, I had a lot of thoughts about that kind of stuff, but as far as this film, it's about the creepiness, and I genuinely thought this film was creepy the whole time. It's a little gory, but it does hit you, I would say, pretty early on with a graphic image. Like, there's something that happens that is, there's some stuff that happens that's creepy, but then there's like one thing where you're like, oh shit, okay, so they can go there. They're gonna go there with the gore. But then it's not pervasively gory. It just can be gory. If that, I don't know if that makes any sense. For people who like are trying to avoid like high levels of gore, I didn't think this was the goriest thing I've ever seen. Um, it does have sort of like these random acts of violence, but they're not always all gory. They're just kind of like, oh shit. Sometimes you can kind of see them coming. Sometimes you're like, I don't know about this. Uh, Everything is sort of presented to you. Damien does a really great job of kind of teasing things, and you don't really know how they're going to be used later on, um, and putting it all together. And it made for a really interesting film. The ending is unsettling, but also leaves you with that sort of like, oh yeah, oh yeah, I know what's gonna happen. You know, like, it doesn't resolve completely, like in the way that some people would like. I would have loved to see that, and it's like, um, I think we know what happens, you know? Like, I think it's pretty clear what, like, if there was another 10 seconds to this film, and I kind of like how it ended. Uh, so yeah, it's not that ambiguous of an ending. It's mostly just like a, you know, it's a pretty clear ending. I thought the acting was pretty good. I liked it. I don't know any of these actors. And it's a Shudder film, and it's sort of like indie limited. This director really only has one other feature to his name. I wish this was a debut, so I could just be like, oh my god, it's a debut too, but it's not. Um, and Now I just want to talk about the audio description. So, I'm familiar with like everybody here. So I'm familiar with AudioEyes, the company, which is a mixed bag. I've given them like thumbs up and thumbs before. I've been like, I don't know, guys, but I've also been like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. Um, Nicole Cirillo has done narration before. I feel like I've talked to her before, and this is this shows you. I just, you know, as much as I continue to talk to people in this world, we're gonna have fun. And Ryan is a friend of mine on Facebook, so yeah, all of my biases are out there. Uh, I think the written part is fine. My only question here would be, I didn't fully understand how she was using her blindness. That was like question number one for me. I would say early on, but this is me having seen the film. Like, I was actually legitimately, for the first, I would say 15 minutes, very lost. And I was like thinking about messaging another blind friend of mine who I know had seen the film and been like, so what are your thoughts on Oddity? And like, that was in my mind because I was like, is it going to be like this the whole time? Where I'm just like, I don't know. And I was like, is this the audio description? Is it but it's more the film. Like the film really wants to kind of throw you off. The film becomes very clear to understand it at a certain point, and then really ties in some of the stuff at the beginning that you may or may not have fully understood. So it puts you at in very unease territory, and there's really nothing that Ryan could have done for that except uh to I also his name was Rain because my screen reader always reads it as Rain, but I'm just gonna trust that in the audio description when Nicole reads his name as Ryan, it's like if you can't read the person who you worked with on on the film their name correctly, I'm just gonna assume it's Ryan from now on. And my screen reader has been profoundly wrong this whole time. So, this is all based off of Nicole's pronunciation of his name. So, Nicole, uh, Ryan wrote a pretty decent script here. There's a lot of good meaty stuff here, a lot of good scary stuff, spooky stuff. My God, the wooden man thing was just, I was just like, what? Okay, so I've talked a lot in other things, especially on my website when I do a little bit more TV reviews and I get a chance to dive more into TV shows and not bore everybody with, I don't know, 18 videos a day on my channel, about the use of like performative audio description where you kind of match the tone of the film. I didn't mind the fact that you were narrating the film. Like, I'm not like, oh, I need male narrators all the time. I need people with creepy voices all the time. This does have a female lead to it. And that, you know, cool. Like, it's not that. So what you're trying to do is yelling. I don't know how else to tell you that. It didn't feel engaging and it didn't feel performative. It just felt like you were. She walks down the hallway. She opens the door. She goes into the room. And there's a big man standing in the room. I was just like, oh my God. Jesus Christ. It just felt like you were just yelling at me. It really did. And in a weird way, it felt like you were trying to jump scare me more than the movie was. And I didn't like it. I appreciate the effort at performative audio description where you're trying to just sort of give that increased like intensity during certain moments. This is not quite there. I would encourage you to explore it a little bit more and explore levels. There's like a mid, there's a rise and a fall too. I even use it in my own voice. You know what I'm saying? My voice is all over the place. I can go down here and I can get really soft. I can get up loud and I can. Performative art is just sort of understanding your voice totally, 100%, beyond just being able to read well, which is what a lot of narrators do, and they have very clear voices that are understood well. When you start breaking into performative art, and one of the reasons why I'm going to keep mentioning Dave Wallace, one of the reasons why Dave Wallace is so good at it is because he's also a member of SAG-AFTRA, and he's a working voice actor who has the ability to voice modulate all the time based on the gig that he gets hired for. So he can actually change his voice, which really helps him navigate audio description scripts and pull out this performative thing. Performative doesn't necessarily mean soft or loud. That is not what this means. And I loved you when you were soft. I hated you when you were loud. It was so weird. It was so weird. It was so uncomfortable and not in a good way. It was just like, why are you yelling at me? It really truly comes across as yelling. And I love Nicole Cirillo as a narrator. And this was so weird for me. So Nicole, please keep doing this, like exploring your voice. Maybe do it like outside of the film. So the next time when you want to try this, you have levels. It's sort of like you have a 1 and a 10 right now, and what I'm telling you is there's also 2 through 9, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that does, but there are so many levels that you can explore other than just shouting at me. And it kind of felt like I was like, is my audio description narrator trying to jump scare me by just suddenly shouting? This is so weird. Because I didn't think necessarily that the scenes that you were audio described, where you were kind of like yelling at me, were necessarily, because you would do it sort of like when the tension starts to rise and not necessarily a jump scare. So it's like, it was like an unwarranted jump because you had to like get the build to the thing that was going to happen. So oftentimes it wasn't just like, and then a face, you know. Sometimes there was a build. I think the first time that it happened, it was kind of a build to something. So you picked up on the rising tension within the film and thought, well, now would be a good time to yell. But it wasn't quite the right time to yell. It was a little ahead of it. Anyway, yeah, so it ended up not being one of my favorite audio description tracks of the year, and but yet I don't want to say no, and I don't want to say that I hate this either, because I really appreciate the effort. At the same time, it's like it's not there, but at the same time, most people would just whatever. They just say fuck it and just they drone on. We have so many people who sound like they are like adjacent to AI in this industry that I appreciate the fact that she sounds human and is giving a human performance. It's flawed. Guess what? We're flawed as humans. That is what we are. And this film, I think, even explores the flaws in our humanity, which is kind of cool. I thought this was a weird film, quirky little film, and I kind of loved it. And I really hope people check out Oddity, because I don't want to ruin it, and I don't want to say things, but uh, it's the mood of it had me the whole time. Like, I was engaged in this film more than I've been in a lot of other films. And I was just like, sometimes nowadays, especially because I watch the films at home a lot and I have the opportunity to fiddle, to play around with things like my phone all the time. I judge how good a film is by how much did I play around with my phone. And I like almost never touched my phone during this. Like I did not, I was in it. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? I was very much in this film. So, yeah, good job. Like I said, just a couple little quibbles with it. Like, I'm not entirely sure that this is the best blind representation, at least in terms of her movement and like molesting the food. But other than that, I was pretty happy with it. So I'm gonna give Oddity an A-. I liked it. I think you will too. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.